passionate about Cleveland sports.
He's going in! Touchdown!
Browns, Indians, Cavs, the Big Ten, and more.
Cleveland is a city of champions once again!
Andy and Jarid, Cleveland and beyond.
A swing and a drive! To deep right!
Here are your hosts, Andy Billman and Jared Watson.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Andy and Jarid, Cleveland and Beyond. He's Andy Billman. I'm Jared Watson. And today we welcome to the show writer for ESPN and ESPN the magazine, Seth Wickersham.
Cleveland Browns.
Seth wrote an eye-opening expose on the Cleveland Browns organization that fans everywhere are talking about. First of all, welcome to the show, Seth.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Before we jump into the substance of the story, there's one thing that stands out to me as this overarching theme that makes me ask that even with the good vibes that we see right now in Cleveland with John Dorsey and Freddie Kitchens, I don't know that I feel comfortable that Jimmy isn't going to make changes before anything in this regime is really given a chance. If there's any slip-ups along the way, without his meddling, is that a fair thing to worry about for Browns fan? And is his antsiness in the front row during the Freddie Kitchens press conference, is that a sign that he doesn't feel completely comfortable with the new hierarchy and reporting situation?
Well, I don't know about the stuff from the press conference, but I will say that, that to me is the most interesting thing is that, during the last half of the season, you saw Baker Mayfield come on and he was a force in waiting and he seemed immune to Browns history. And then you have the only thing that can ruin a player like that is dysfunction in the organization. And that's where the rest of the team comes in. And, I don't know how it's going to play out, but I saw those two sort of forces colliding. And that's what made me want to write about the story. I wanted to know, why Jimmy Haslem is so impatient. I want to know why there were so many shotgun marriages. I wanted to know what it's like to be in that building, how decisions are made, and look at it against this brilliant young quarterback that they have.
You bring up a good point, how decisions are made. You had a great quote at the beginning of the article where it says, by the time someone in the management quotes, by the time you realize that it confines in everyone, it's too late, you're gone. Which I thought kind of summarized what you're doing with the article there. When you did all your research and you did everything that goes into it, Seth, did you kind of find that Jimmy does operate that way relating to that quote, or does he really just have one or two select that he really relies on to make decisions and advice?
No, that's what he does. And, what he's essentially done is set up these shotgun marriages between GM and head coach, and then have them both report to him. And by doing that, he not only makes himself the arbitrator, but it also has created this atmosphere of distrust and backstabbing and endless politicking to be the last one to talk to him about any given issue. And I think that is a big problem. And that's why, John Dorsey made such a key point of pointing out that Freddie Kitchens will report to him. And in theory, at least, that eliminates the appeals court to Haslem. Like, they have to figure their stuff out. They can't just always go to mom and dad and have that sort of be the default every time that there is a problem. And so that to me will be fascinating to monitor going forward.
The one person who kind of came into Browns' lives was Dee Haslem in 16 and 17. In reading your article, you kind of acknowledged that. It's interesting. I didn't realize until after reading this today, Seth, that she kind of didn't have her presence felt as much in 18 as a Browns fan. And when I was reading your article, I kind of noticed the same thing. Does Dee still have a presence there? When I was reading your article, I kind of felt her after 17 kind of going back behind the curtain and not as much up front. Or is she, from what you can tell from your research, is she still there and really going day to day with the team?
Yeah, and I think she looks at a lot of business side operations. But I think it may be, I'm reticent to declare it fixed or changed, but things are a little bit different under Dorsey in the sense that, they used to bring in all kinds of people into the draft room and just let them hang out as the thing unfolded. And that did not happen this past year with the draft. I mean, this was John Dorsey's draft. And Jimmy and Dee were in and out during the day. J.W. Johnson was there, but this was John Dorsey's draft. And so, I don't know what's cause and effect when it comes to Dee. Obviously, she's a co-owner. She can enter whatever meeting she wants to enter. But, my sense is that she's more overseeing the business side and Jimmy oversees the football side more.
Gotcha. Peyton Manning has always had this aura around Jimmy, and he got brought up in your article with the Gase situation, and I guess Gase didn't want to be a part of it for whatever reason, but Manning was the one who kind of alluded to it. We've heard in the past that Manning does have his ear. Did you find that to be true in any research? Do you hear Manning's name a lot, or could what you're alluding to now? It sounds like Dorsey's kind of got the gavel.
I mean, look, given how this coaching search went, this is John Dorsey's team. He got the coach that he wanted. Adam Gase is still a favorite of Peyton Manning's. Peyton Manning and Jimmy Haslem are still close. Adam Gase did not get an interview. Josh McDaniels, who has been a favorite of Jimmy Haslem in the past, did not get an interview. They did interview some people that, obviously was indicative of them sort of like circling their wagons and seeing what was out there. But, this was John Dorsey's decision at the end of the day. And, that I think it's a big deal.
The one guy who I've heard about and talking to Browns alums and Brown staffers is Alex Shiner. I didn't see his name a part of this, and I thought he might be a little bit more a part. Did he really just have the business side and he just kind of came and went, or did you not really hear much about Shiner, and that's the reason why he wasn't really brought up much in the piece as much as others?
Well, he was involved in trying to get Jimmy to see a different way. I mean, he led a bunch of those meetings in what was it that I wrote in I forget the exact year. I think it was 2015, fall of 2015. Jimmy's starting to sour on Ray Farmer as GM, and Alec and Sashi Brown and some of the analytics folks set up these meetings with leaders at other sports. Theo Epstein, Sam Presti, right. Paul DePodesta, obviously. So that was Alec's thing. And then Sashi got promoted to run football ops. Right. And so it was Sashi's deal from then on out.
Talking about that, the one thing that and by the way, you tweeted something great. You people should check it out. Seth tweeted out a basically almost like not a pie chart, but basically like a graph of how the analytics side is going to work it in the Browns starting in 14 and 15, the Sashi Brown era. You got Seth, kudos to find that. I studied that all day today when I was reading your tweet. Did you, and now in your neutral party, do you think analytics, I know analytics has been around, obviously, the game forever, but the Browns really took it more, they really made it a forefront. Do you think analytics got a fair shot at the end of the day? And do you think he'll ever get back that way at all? Do you hear any, is Paul DePodesta still there?
Yeah, I mean, he is. I'm not sure how influential all this stuff is, but, I don't know. And I want to be clear about something, and I tried to make this clear in the story, but I think that everything that Sashi Brown did got tagged as analytics, when a lot of it was based on decisions that the traditional football people were on board with. The analytics folks were just an easy target to blame when things went badly, and in some cases they did go badly. And but I think that team knew that they were going to have a couple hard years. I think one of the biggest issues in the NFL is the lore of the 9-7 season. And you can easily be 9-7 and then completely fade away again. And their idea was basically forget about ever being 9-7 for the next 2 years. We are not going to do well. We're going to have high draft picks. We're going to try to accumulate them more and build an organization that way. And then they just ended up being way worse than anybody anticipated.
So maybe it's a fair question. Should Sashi have gotten more of a shake? Because clearly, the McDermott little tidbit was fascinating. I never heard that. So maybe the better question is, do you think, looking at everything, did Sashi get a real fair shake in your opinion? I mean, I don't know if he did.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, nobody gets a fair shake there.
Right.
I mean, it's true. I don't know. They blow things up every 18 months to 2 years. And so it's impossible to know. But I think that, each of these decisions to sort of clean house on their face make sense, because at the end of the day, there's always been too much fighting and too little winning. But it's the stream of it that becomes problematic. And again, looking at it in the face of Baker Mayfield, that to me is the biggest threat to him being a successful player.
Seth, I am still trying to understand Jimmy Haslem's brain in these situations and whether or not you can trust, when somebody shows you who they are, believe them. Browns fans are not going to believe that he all of a sudden is just going to allow this linear path, this Kitchens to Dorsey to Jimmy sort of thing. We're all wondering how long it's going to last. And we saw it even with the hiring of Freddie Kitchens, because prior to that, you had 6-7 guys that were a part of these interview processes. Once again, with Jimmy in the room. Is this something that you see as being sustainable? Is it going to come down to winning? If there are some mistakes along the way, because at the end of the day, that really is the worry. Can it last?
Yeah, I wish I knew. I have no idea. We'll just see. That to me is the most fascinating part about it. Yeah,
we're all going to sit and watch and hope. We've got good things in place right now, and that's the good sign going forward. Let's see if Mr. Haslem can pump the brakes when needed and let John Dorsey run this thing. We have a saying around here: in Dorsey we trust, and we're going to stick with that until further notice. Writer for ESPN and ESPN the magazine, Seth Wickersham. You can read a story all about the Cleveland Browns dysfunction on ESPN.com and ESPNCleveland.com. Seth, thanks for joining us today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
This is working right now. And it's a steady ship.
Right.
And he basically alluded to it. Can he finally, for the first time, handle that process? And when history says no, but we'll see. And this is what we'll lead off with. I think it has changed. I thought the press conference with him sitting in the front row showed a lot of change.
Well, yeah, sitting there. And I don't think Seth and when I brought up to Seth about Jimmy Haslem seeming antsy in the front row, that was in the story, and maybe I worded it incorrectly, but he alluded to Mr. Haslem being kind of not interested completely in what was going on at the podium, and that as soon as it was over, Jimmy didn't take much time to kind of walk out of the room. And that's where I was wondering if he's even fully comfortable with the situation right now as it stands. I don't know.
Right. I think here's the big thing. And this article today was such a bombshell in a day where you weren't it's been typical Cleveland Brown stuff.
Yeah, we didn't plan on doing a show.
Once you fall asleep, man, bam, it's like a face plant. Wake up. Here comes the big punches. Here's the thing. This is all cringeworthy. You heard this today, gut punch. I think that's all accurate. The positive is, though, I think this is now I thought Seth's article, which I think is very well written and gives you a lot of tidbits. Yes, we as Browns fans followed this. There's a lot of moments. Yes, we knew that. Yes, we knew that. Yes, we knew that. But there's some tidbits in there we're going to get into here.
Yes.
The big thing I took, Jared, at the end is I think Dorsey now is moving this thing forward. From D and Jimmy sitting in the front row and allowing John to handle the press conference, I think is a good thing. And I think it has changed. What Seth is saying is history says otherwise. But what I'm saying is I think he's right. But I think from what I've seen in recent days, in recent weeks, I think it has changed. I think it will stay this way with Dorsey being in charge without the Haslem, quick to change kind of stuff going on.
Well, and I know that we talk about Dee Haslem and her role, not necessarily involving herself in the football operations of the team. But I'm wondering if she's at least pulling on Jimmy's ear a little bit more. Hey, stop it.
Maybe
because it's hard to even say that it's micromanaging that he's doing. It's almost he's allowing these guys to kind of weave their own webs, and he's allowing it to be woven of these, like Seth had said, the stabbing in the back and the you think you have his trust, and by the time that you realize everyone's got his ear, you're gone. Those quotes from the story stand out because you don't know whether it's Jimmy's a guy who wants to learn. He wants to pay attention to every little detail, but maybe that's the problem. That is the problem. He's involved in too much of how the sausage is made.
I think that is. I think also at times he had way too much input coming in, and he's got to do a better job of filtering it out. I think he was learning on the job, so that goes to half of it. And I'll be fair, that goes to half of it. I think he was learning on the job at a time where I think he realized how much he was going to have to go into these decisions, meaning he, instead of a group of one, he had a group of team. It sounds good on paper, but I've learned, not just in pro sports, but in any kind of big hierarchy, when you have a group, it sounds great. It can be very problematic, especially when you have 3 against 4, or 4 against 5, or even 2 and 3 if you have a group of 5. It doesn't go as smoothly as you think. The other thing here that I want to get into, all these names, which we'll get into, we're going to go through all the big bullet points here in a second. Farmer, you heard a lot about today. Joe Banner, you heard a lot about today. Alex Shiner got a little moment here and there. You hear a little bit too, obviously, even in the days of Sashi Brown. The thing is, Jared, all those guys, at the end of the day, I think Jimmy really didn't believe in them getting the job done. And frankly, because none of those guys are really out there in football getting jobs, I think Jimmy was right. And Dorsey's the first guy who he trusts a lot. And Dorsey, you trust, you kind of mentioned it. It's so true. And I think that's Jimmy's politician button. That's kind of Jimmy's politician button. And Dorsey, I trust. And I think that's why going forward, this is all going to be great. These last 5 years, which we're going to get into, I mean, it was bleeped up.
Well, yeah.
Okay?
I mean, at least John Dorsey was interviewed for the job.
That's right. And he took action on it. So I think that's where you kind of land on this and I think this article lands that way. I think it made, by the way, I feel even better about John Dorsey after today.
We've talked about this. It's not a hit piece. It's not a hit piece. It's a very honest piece that jumps around from every issue regarding the way things have gone down in Berea since Jimmy Haslem has taken over from this team. And while it does show that the problems do come from the top, it does not attack the Haslem family. It doesn't attack Jimmy. It doesn't take cheap shots. There's a little goofy piece in there about the hashtag, which I'll just only bring it up briefly. Hashtag DP has never stood for dog pound ever. So whoever was in the communication department for the Browns and wanted to look through that hashtag on Twitter and fed it through the TVs in Berea, probably not a good idea. But that
didn't work out.
But on the decision making and the piecemealing these regimes together has seemed to be the problem year in and year out. Keep this guy, get rid of this guy, fix this part.
Absolutely.
You're like creating your own holes in the dam that you then have to plug that create new holes in the dam.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's a good place to start off. I mean, so we're going to go through the article. Again, as Jared alluded to at the top with Seth, ESPN.com, ESPN Cleveland. Again, it's going to be cringeworthy, but read it. You need to read this because it's really a behind-the-scenes curtain to me of the Haslems. And it's not a flattering article about the Haslems, but I think it is the truth. I think something the Haslems can do with this is, hey, this is the old and this is the new. Yeah. And here's the old. And I would even, I think I heard Rizzo, I heard Grossi and other guys kind of mention this. I think they're right. Don't be afraid to have your staff read this being like, hey, that era is now changed. The new era is here.
Sunlight is the best disinfectant, Andy.
Agreed. So we're going to go through it. We're not going to go through line by line, but just the key points. And by the way, it's filled with them. So we're probably missing a couple. But here's the first thing to lead off, which was great by Seth, is the play-by-play of how Hugh gets fired.
Yes.
And it's basically pretty simple. Haslem and Dorsey come in. Jackson asks why he gets fired. Dorsey replies, the team quit on you. By the way, I agree with Dorsey. I think he was right. And at that time, then later, Jackson goes, get the blank out of my office. By the way, not your office.
Not your office, brother. Not your office. No.
That right there just says everything you need to know.
Hugh Jackson's tenure seems to have been bookended by temper tantrums, whether it be throwing a fit over personnel decision before he's even coached a game and screaming at Hugh or screaming at Mr. Haslem. Maybe he wasn't screaming. Maybe I'm using the wrong word. Getting upset, getting testy, however he went into that office and throwing a fit over a trade that was made to pick up a young punter and get a good draft pick that was later used actually to pick up Jarvis Landry, might we add. Hugh was allowed to get away with a lot that in other places, I don't know anyone would have got away with stuff like that.
Look, if people want to say quit's too strong a word, here's why I'd say I think it's fair what Dorsey said. Mentally, they were checked out. We talked about that in this podcast.
Yeah.
That team was mentally checked out in that
wasn't that long ago.
Game. That Buccaneers game, they were just going through the motions. And if you didn't see it, I mean, I don't know. I just think that's an accurate. I know why I use the term quit. It's a harsh word, but I think it's accurate. Again, this team had too much physical talent, as we all learned, to be doing what they were doing in those two games. And so it was obvious. I know some people say that, but again, that kind of summed up the Hugh Jackson thing.
Yeah. There's a counter to everything that Hugh got mad about. Hugh wanted Myles Garrett and then got mad about quarterback issues when they could have taken when he refused to take, didn't want to take Trubisky, So how are you going to get angry at that? Hugh threw a fit about that punter, the punter issue early on with Mr. Haslem, yet look at his special teams throughout his tenure, especially over this past season. Don't tell me you cared about these things. He's a person that likes to sit back and say, "See, I told you so," and act like he had all these wonderful things after the fact. I don't want to hear any of it. When his actions never showed otherwise.
I agree. And by the way, there's some other people who followed that line of path with Jackson, as we're going to get into. I think there's other guys in here who did
Ray
the same
Farmer
thing.
did it at a higher level.
Yes, Ray Farmer definitely did. I'd say Sashi Brown had a little bit of that.
A lot of appeasement, and trying to keep. Well, I didn't make that decision. Well, you know what? That's not how a leader acts.
He's not my
Get the
guy.
hell out of here.
Yeah, he's not my guy. That's another one. I mean, I didn't mean to step on you there, but that's another one. How many times did you? Well, anyways, the next bullet point here. There's so many. The next bullet point in order. This Haslam quote is the quote that's going to stick with me in this article, as I thought it did sum it up. You think you're the one he trusts, but by the time you realize that he confides in everyone, it's too late. You're gone. That was said by a former high-level member of Browns management. That quote, I thought, summed up everything that Seth touched on in the article. It was a wonderful quote.
He makes everyone feel special.
Yes.
I thought I was special.
Yes. Yes. Oh, and it's kind of how we felt as fans. But anyways, I thought that quote was very eye-opening. Again, it has hammered home some points. Okay, the Banner stuff kind of comes in after that. He does focus on Banner. There's a couple of things I found interesting. Jared, you should chime in. The one thing that I really thought was interesting from Banner is he kind of came in here saying, hey, I'm here to turn around this factory of sadness. I come in here with confidence. I think I can use traditional scouting, analytics, and psychological methods to help turn the Browns around. I think that's interesting that Banner kind of came through with that. Psychological methods.
So everybody thinks they know psychology, and until listen, what people think they know is psychology is pop psychology. That's not real psychology. It's the stuff that you get, the goofy articles that show, the goofy, funny stories about how people act or whatever. There's some truth in some of that stuff. There's some truth in what Freud did. But to walk around and not be a psychologist and think you're going to use psychological methods to do anything, get the hell out of here. Not going to happen.
And the funny thing is, Banner was known as a numbers guy. He kept good numbers on how to hit the luxury tax and how not to go over it and how not to get in salary cap hell. That's kind of what Banner was known for. So I found that line to be very interesting. The next line that I picked out was Chud, and I thought Chud, we all know this, but it's great to hear someone who's not from the Cleveland area speak about it. He is from Toledo, but he's not a Clevelander. But his quote was, "The intensity is stronger than any other markers when it comes to Browns fans. The history of Cleveland sports factors into it. It gets negative faster and it builds pressure faster." And Jared, I've always alluded to this to people who aren't from Cleveland. They talk about Yankee fans are tough, and they talk about Philly fans are tough. Red Sox, you hear that a lot. I think the Browns, and I love it. We have high expectations. We are very knowledgeable fans, and we expect the best. And yes, Tribe fans are demanding and Cavs fans are demanding. All they are. But Browns are very unique. We will really sniff out bull blank when we see it.
Well, when there's a breach in the ship's sides, the water fills up quickly.
Yes.
And you will drown very quickly when the fans sense that ship is sinking, period.
The Browns are a rabid, and Cleveland is, but specifically Browns. I'm a part of it. We are a rabid fan base. And when we get a little upset or we get happy, it's extreme. There's usually it's very rarely tempered. The only time I can ever remember is the Anderson era when we went 10-6. Outside of that, I thought it was always very extreme. When we were winning, we were excited. When we were losing, we were miserable.
Oh, yeah, I was affected. You know what it felt like to not watch a Browns game last season or the season prior? It felt terrible. It was something was missing in my life. I was so bitter. Why can't we figure this out? Yeah, there's no
right. The next kind of bullet point I picked up was I know it is a deep side of this article. The Niners, Jim Harbaugh. We always heard trade rumors about this.
Yeah.
This article disputes that it really never got that serious. That's what it was reported here. The thing that we've all heard in the past is Peyton Manning's influence on the organization, and it came out that he really tried, which we all kind of heard throughout the tea leaves, but it's confirmed here. Gase really wanted nothing to do with the Browns, but Manning really pushed on Haslem, say, hey, you should really take a look at this guy. I think the bigger thing here is, and Gase, A, did not want anything to do with the Browns, but B, more importantly, here we go again where, and then by the way, that happens in sports. It's okay. Haslem's getting influence, and yet Haslem later then tells Banner, hey, let's do the search, then meet with Lombardi. I mean, it's kind of all over the place here of how it should go. It should be more a Banner, hey, I'll come to the owner with who I like, and Lombardi and I work together. In this case here, it kind of feels like Haslem kind of got some research and kind of went to Banner with what he wanted to do, and that kind of created the dysfunction there between Banner and Lombardi. At least that's how I read that.
Well, it's the same exact issue that came up with the hiring of Hugh. It was the owner undermining the men in the room who were making football decisions. Now, you're talking about a 4-1 vote. Everybody wanted it's slipping my mind. McDermott. Everybody wanted McDermott. And Hugh was warned, and he got on a plane and went to Cincinnati right afterwards, and hired Hugh on his own. Like, what are we doing here? Are we because there was so much because they were bought in. Everyone thought he was bought into this new strategy to implement this new strategy of their way ahead of the guardrails, of staying in the guardrails, of being open and honest with each other, of having all those things that they wanted to do to build this team. And you were right when you asked the question, did those analytics guys ever get a fair shot? And the answer is no. The moment Hugh was hired, they didn't get a shot.
Yeah, that's the one thing I think that, jumping ahead for a second, before this article, I would never have given a second thought to the analytics side of things. And I know what Seth was alluding to. It's been there forever, but honestly, living it was really Shiner, Sasha, and later DePodesta in that team of three. And then later really Sasha and DePodesta. All right. But for what it's worth, like the big thing is with that, and when it came down to with analytics, if they gave a recommendation to McDermott and they turn around and they hire Hugh, now I don't feel any differently. I don't really want that vibe back in Berea. I'll say this, Jared. I think what you said is right. Did they get a fair shot? No. And how in the heck did you think that was going to be shoehorned into something that was going to work? It kind of makes sense why Jackson really went on the trail early on in his coaching career. I'm an analytics guy. Because I'm sure he felt 10 minutes of being in that building, holy crap, I got people who did not want me as coach, and the only guy who wants me is Haslem, which that obviously created just a terrible family tree.
And reporting directly to him.
And self-destructing. Yeah, we'll get to that more in a second. The next big bullet point was in 14 when this was one of my, I'm so glad in a way we didn't do a podcast in 14. Because Banner and Lombardi was really, really humorous at times at how much they argued and it got leaked publicly. Those two just did not get along, and why they were brought together, I have no idea. But Banner and Lombardi arguing over a player, which kind of exploded during Super Bowl week for people that remembered. And then basically the fallout was everybody gets fired again, Banner and Lombardi, and then assistant GM Ray Farmer gets a call to ask about it. And Farmer later told associates he was surprised Haslem knew so many details about a routine in a draft meeting.
Yeah.
And I just think what it speaks to again, though, is like everybody. It's just in 2014, 15, 16, 17, we all knew it. The chaos, there's 1 in 10s. We're at 11, 12, 13. I mean, we are at very extreme levels when the two guys who need to be connecting, Banner and Lombardi, they can't even connect. Farmer is wondering why the owner knows so much about it. The owner's not going to Banner and Lombardi. He's coming to Farmer.
Strange. I mean, again.
WTF. I mean, what is this? It's just chaos. It literally is like balls being thrown in the air and juggled. And it's like, you know what? Here's a chainsaw. Here's some knives. Oh, and we're going to bring wind. But still keep juggling.
Add torches now.
That's kind of what, yeah, exactly. And balance on a unicycle.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
and that's kind of what happened here. So Farmer then becomes the guy. We all heard these stories about his first draft. I'll be honest. I think there's some give and take here about what.
Reminder:
really
Farmer became the guy without an interview, with nothing. He was just elevated, right?
Again, that article in that moment confirms it. He basically said, "So Ray, can I trust you on this? Because I think I'm ready to get rid of these two." And basically, that's what he did. Yeah. So Farmer becomes the guy, and according to Farmer, we all knew this. Pettin always wanted Justin Gilbert. Gilbert was his guy, so Pettin selected him. Farmer was, I guess, targeting now came out today. I've never heard of this as Brandon Cooks. What's interesting is I thought Farmer wasn't a wide receiver guy, but anyways, that's who he's alluded to. What I found more.
Yeah, we don't need playmakers on the team. I remember a lot of that stuff.
No. Overrated. Joe Batonio is my guy. So my whole thing here with Farmer, before we go too far down the road, Farmer, and this is where Dorsey and Farmer differentiate, you have to be a strong presence. You have to have strong authority. And clearly Farmer here was just, I don't know what, I mean, again, I'm not saying it's all Farmer's fault either, but these last two bullet points are just blank and bleep shows.
Yes.
There's nothing else to say. I mean, it is just crap flying everywhere. Oh, who's drafting number 8? We're going to trade down. Then we're going to trade up. That's who's Pettin guy is. Then we're going to do Manziel.
Yeah. Who is in control?
Hey. Oh, everybody's in control.
And then the problem is when Farmer wants to take control, it's at the wrong time. They could have got a high second round draft pick for Brian frickin' Hoyer. And because Farmer wanted to be the man and take it back by the reins, this is my draft. So no. He shot himself in the foot. Are you kidding me?
2014 could be its own documentary. It really could be. And then how about this? Going into that draft, Jared, I remember hearing the Browns and stories being very linked to Bridgewater. And then it comes out today that Haslem didn't get a nice handshake, so he soured on Bridgewater. The bullet point is some of the football guys in the room wanted to wait and pick Bridgewater in the second round. Now, remember, Bridgewater did get a pick in the late first round by the Vikings. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. Right. But the team had soured on Bridgewater after his interview, dinner, and workout with Team Brass. Something about Bridgewater's handshake rubbed Haslem the wrong way.
I feel like I remember that, but I don't know that it was ever said. But for some reason, that stands out to me as something I remember laughing about back then. Yakety Sax is the perfect, and it should be playing throughout this podcast.
Right. Especially in 14, especially in this draft, because this was such a big draft, and it kind of sets up why we were in hell for this 4-year period. Okay, to your point, the next one's Hoyer. Farmer decided that was his moment of triumph. I'm not trading and going to give up a second-round draft pick for Brian Hoyer. Now, it's one little catch-22, but he still should have made the trade. We all know that. The catch-22 is, God, could you imagine if you traded Hoyer? We would have had to start Johnny Manziel and played him every game. Oh my God, Jared!
Well, Farmer reached out and called Hoyer to calm him down after the draft was made. So that's another reason why he probably didn't make the trade. He ended up his heart was too involved at that point.
It's insanity. And that's another thing. Okay, there's so much to do. Okay, but right, so that whole thing happened too with Hoyer. Okay. And by the way, that was our good season. That's when we went 7-9.
Yeah.
That was and by the way, it's not a good season. Let me wash my mouth out with soap. That was we weren't terrible season. We were decent. Okay, so 7-9. So then after the 7-9 season, this is so great. Haslem announced to the football staff that he was committed to Farmer and Pettin, but I want more. Also, that general counsel and salary cap strategist Sashi Brown would have more involvement in football operations. Holy cow. Can you imagine that meeting? It was so as a chance to take administrative duties off Farmer's plate and free him to watch more film. Farmer didn't buy it. I don't blame Farmer. There will be 2 people holding the bag when this goes south. And I get in the bag with blank. Me and Pettin. That's not true, says Haslem. We will do this together.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, sure we will.
Jared,
Sure we will.
Oh, sure. So Sashi Brown comes in, and again, just more of a muck. I think something I was trying to get from Seth, I thought that's more too of Alex Shiner there. I know Sashi's the one with the name, but I thought Shiner also had a role in that too. But it's not reported there, so I can't go down that road. But I always got the vibe that it's not just Sashi, it's Alex Shiner also pushing this and putting this all together. But anyway,
just think of all these names how does anyone even keep it organized? All the names that we've mentioned today, Andy. Unravel, undo this web. Seth did a good job of undoing the web for the most part.
By the way, he did. And by the way, we had already fired a coach, Chud. So this is our second coach, Pettin. And by the way, we've gone through Bannon and Lombardi have come and gone.
Mm-hmm. Well, don't forget Holmgren was fired at the very beginning too. When Haslem took over.
And that's another thing. That was the right move. That was no question.
Yeah.
So it's your goodbye Shermer to the whole thing. All right. So you get rid of them, but so Bannon and Lombardi are gone, and then after 1 year, you're going to tell the GM, hey, you know what? I think you're doing great. Just want to add this other staff of who? Sashi, Alec, some analytics guys. I mean, it's like you can't even allow this to breathe in for air. Okay, fine. But that is what it is. So then the next, this is the great one. So then the Farmer tenure at this point, as it goes in the article, is really going south. And then, marketing and sales teams are starting to get freaked out, as the article goes on to say. So marketing, I'm going to take this right from the article. Marketing executives wanted employees to see how fans were engaging with Browns on social media. It wasn't going well, obviously. So they projected the Browns feed onto a giant wall at the facility. It was like broadcast talk radio over the entire building. One particular day, it was worse than that. One of the marketing staffers entered, as you mentioned, the hashtag DP. For people who don't know, don't type that in. What's it say? It's definitely a porn term, and then you can use your mind.
Ask your friends to tell you all the dirty jokes. They'll know what it means.
And not family members. Really good friends who will. Yeah, don't talk to your mom or dad or brothers.
I wouldn't even Google it if I were you.
No. So well, you can, but no, you'll get viruses if you click on those links. So they thought it was for Dog Pound. The problem was that hashtag had carried a few different meetings. So basically, at one point for 20 minutes, they had porn going on throughout the building.
When has hashtag DP ever stood for Dog Pound? When? I would love to meet the Cleveland fan that went hashtag Browns, hashtag DP. Nobody.
What I love is the last line. And then a tech employee killed the feed. All right. Thank God. So, I mean, they can't even kill the feed properly. It took 20 minutes until someone
changed the page.
As soon as that happened, wouldn't be hitting your space bar or closing down your laptop. As soon as that happened, be like, oh God, I got to get out of here right now. This is so bad. But not just let it play out. All right. So, anyways.
No, Haslem wanted one of his tech guys to come in and kill it.
Exactly. I'm sure they I'm sure they just cut the cord with scissors
and then fired him when it took longer than 10 minutes and brought in a new tech guy.
All right. So what has been discovered by the fit? By the way, so you thought 14 draft can't go wrong? Wait till 15. Farmer hates analytics. Is the statement. And Farmer's never going to make it through the 15th season. Think about that. It's only been, oh my gosh, maybe a year and a month or two, and he already knows I'm already out. So by the time the 15 draft rolls around,
not to defend Farmer, because at the end of the day, Farmer was way. You want to talk about he was in the deep end and not ready to tread above water. He just wasn't. He was never ready for that job.
Look, how did Cam Irvin do?
Ooh.
Danny Shelton.
Oh.
Danny Shelton was actually one of our better drafts from him. Draft player. Joe Antonio, put down your trophy mantle case. I get it.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, buddy. I can't tell you any more of your draft picks outside of those guys.
Nope.
Cam Irving. He's gonna play everywhere on the line. Anytime I hear that now, I always get cringe-worthy. People can't see it. Just Jared shaking his face like a child with eating peas or broccoli. Like it just doesn't go anywhere. Oh my God, such a mess. It's amazing. It's amazing we sat through this. So the 15 draft comes around. I love this. This is one of my favorites. They had green dots for analytics for saying, hey, these are our highest rating. So on the night towards the end of the but Farmer said, hell no, I'm not doing that. Screw that. I'm going my way or highway. So one night towards the end of the 2015 season, Haslem invited the analytics staff to dinner. Again, after, I think, what was it that year, Jared? 3-13? I think something like that.
Yeah.
I think it's 3-13. So and Shiner told him to include Farmer. Haslem didn't want to. He knew Farmer wasn't part of the team's future. Still, according to sources, Haslem told Shiner, who declined comment, that he would invite Farmer, but he never did.
Who does that? Jimmy Haslem does that.
So Farmer's gone. That clearly didn't work out. Okay, so we're okay. But don't worry. We've been grooming this young gentleman named Sashi Brown, who's got medical degrees, very bright. Sashi, we want to give you the job. Sashi, quote, don't give me the job if you're going to blow it up. I don't need to do this, according to the Browns staffers. Not exactly ready to take the reins, Jared.
Insert narrator's voice. He blew it up.
I know. Oh, my gosh.
He eventually blew it up.
I just love this. Hey, look, I kind of like getting out by 5 o'clock. I am tired. Like, I don't want to do this if this is going to be a blow-up job. So, anyways, it's fat. That whole thing. So that's when Deep Odessa comes in too, obviously. And that's the point too, where the big thing that comes up that I mentioned that Seth tweeted out is the Browns guardrails, they called it. Those who work closely with the Brown, Sashi, I'm sorry, those who work closely with Brown could tell that he's fueled by the hope of all those who could take share to be known as, hey, we're going to be the one to turn around the franchise. And the analytics group authored a color-coded list of goals labeled the Brown Guardrails. It consisted of 9 tenets, and from talent retention to ending uncoordinated leaks to communicating with more coaches, accumulating as many draft picks as possible. They were very good at that, especially high second rounders. They were very good at that too.
A lot of value.
Left unsaid, they got a lot of value. I'm not sure what the value turned out to be, but okay. Left unsaid, the document was the most important goal. The Browns have to stick together. This is like a roller coaster. The analytics contingent would tell Haslem, he couldn't get off in the ride in the middle. So they have this whole, you got to read it. It's
Jimmy got off in the beginning, not even the middle. Didn't even get to the middle.
Yeah, I'm sure.
This is why I ask those questions, Andy. This is why I don't know whether I can trust what we've got right now.
Well, here's what I would say. If I saw that grid, if I were Jimmy, the guardrails, I would look at that and be like, this is kind of scary, boring, and very, very scientific with, we are going to do this and do this and do this. And as we all know, that's kind of how people in life works. Like, you want some sort of organization and cleanliness, but that really reads like a scientific chart. It's like,
it didn't need to go that deep, but do you think that those guys did that? One, because they're the they're the nerds as John Dorsey would refer to them as.
Fine.
But they also know look, when you're trying to get an owner to get it, they're drawing that for him. at the end of the day, right? I mean, that's for him.
But you can tell Jimmy probably read that and went like,
he shouldn't have,
crap.
though. Maybe parts of it.
Yeah, but again, it's not that it's badly written. It's not like the goals weren't attainable. It's not like the ideas were bad. But Jared, when you read that chart, you're almost like,
yeah,
are you saying here if you mix this much flour and this much salt, you make bread, and hey, you don't remember, it's just, that's not how really it flowed. It does. That chart didn't flow. It had no vibe. It's very, okay, I'm going to say it. It's kind of an intimidating chart because when you look at it, God forbid you go outside that chart. God forbid you go outside the guardrails. And you go on personality or feel or coaches. No. It's not part of the guardrails. You got to go by the guardrails.
Yeah, but I think part of it was that we see what happens when Jimmy goes outside of feel, when those guys, I think that there's an argument to be made for some of those things, but I definitely understand. Like with any normal organization, no, they don't need this. But training wheels are necessary in this situation.
I know.
This is bumper bowling. Put the bumpers up. That's fine. Put the bumpers up because we're dealing with somebody that runs the team. I can think of somebody else who makes decisions and changes them on a regular basis before they know all the facts.
Here's my final part about the guardrails. If you got that piece of paper, Jared, are you reading every single word in there?
Yeah, exactly. No.
Thank you. Okay.
No. How do you, as anybody else, anybody who didn't write the guardrails would look at that and be like, yeah, that's corny, and throw it.
That's my point. You can't take it seriously. Okay.
Look, I'm there now. Now I'm with you.
Okay. See what I mean?
Yeah, now I'm with you.
How could you read that and be like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm following this. And if I follow this, we're going to win. There's no way. No one would ever think that way. All right. More, but by the way, there's more. So the hiring then causes problems again. Haslem choosing Jackson. That's the thing that we kind of relived here. I think to what you brought up, the Sean McDermott thing aside, I mean, look, he's the coach of the Bills, and I think that's rewriting way too much history. They chose Jackson, so whatever. The thing that's interesting, though, is that's not who the guys voted in the room. And then what was also interesting is D. Podesta going on the theory of, hey, if I get in his ear to last, he'll actually listen, and Haslem still flew to Cincinnati and hired Jackson. Interesting.
Look, is it possible that things are changing? We're seeing that things are. We're seeing that there are changes.
Look. Let me just remind everybody. We're gonna get. There's big positives here. Listen to the whole podcast. We'll be all right. But you gotta read these. They're interesting, Jared. They're interesting. Jackson gets upset about a punter being traded and Andy Lee. That's his first thing he explodes about. Not about anything else on the team.
Yeah.
Not that you might be starting Cody Kessler some games, but about Andy Lee punting. Carson Wentz, D. Podesta, which we kind of already knew. He didn't consider him a franchise quarterback. Then Jackson, that's kind of stuff we already knew already. And then the other one, which I'll give you Jackson credit. He was the one guy who stood up and said, I think we should really draft Myles Garrett. I think you're crazy if you let him slide. That Hugh Jackson was right on, by the way. I thought he was right over Trubisky. I think Garrett's the guy.
No, it was, but it was on accident. I mean, blind squirrels, Andy. Blind squirrels. Even blind squirrels will find a nut every once in a while.
Well, I tried to get that blind squirrel nut. I tried to. I try to give him at least one.
Well, I mean, you give him that, but then you're neglecting to mention that in the article, I believe it shows that even with that, he complained because he felt like he didn't have a quarterback. Well, you didn't get one.
Well, yeah, Jackson.
What are you talking about, Hugh?
Look. That's all Captain Obvious. This is. You're right.
Ooh.
You're right. No, Jackson. I got poor Jared all fired up. But there's more, like the total dysfunction. Again, I guess the analytics guys, which I didn't really know this, but I guess they didn't like Kaiser, but yet they drafted him. It's so weird. Why would you draft a guy who's not an analytics guy? That kind of came up. It is interesting too that they never drafted Mahomes or Watson, but that's old news. D cutting the sales team, and then
right move.
The famous quote later. Right move, by the way. Then saying, "Hey, look, I if I would have known it had been this hard, I would never bought in the team." She's disputed that quote. I mean, it's up to people whether they take that at face or not. It is interesting though that that someone thought that she did say that. So I don't think he also had multiple sources, so he wouldn't have printed it. And then I think the other interesting thing here at the very end today is Haley told Kitchens at the end of the Steeler week in Pittsburgh, like, hey, and basically, by the way, it's been reported here today too, that Haslem before the Jackson game said, hey, look, Haley, we're going to let him go by Monday. We're going to get him adios. And then what's interesting is Haley thought, I'm not going to get fired. Not only that, I'm not going to take the job. Kitchens, you should take the job. It should be your job, not mine. All interesting.
I want to know more about that. I really do. I want to know why Haley would have said that he didn't want the interim head coach job. I want to know why he thought he was going to get it. And I want to know what it was that made him recommend Freddie Kitchens out of everyone. That was just,
I thought that one's the only one.
Says a lot without saying anything, to be honest. I mean, there's a lot that I still have questions about.
Right. Here's the other thing about that one. There's a lot of people disputing each other here.
Weird.
Meaning
weird.
It's very weird because that's not. It's just all weird. It's all weird.
Like, of course they are. There's 9 million names that we've mentioned today, Andy.
Right. No, I know. I'm drained. Okay, so we're good. You got to read this article. I know it's going to be cringeworthy. You're going to be drained. I will say again, though, moving today and forward, it's so bright and it's so good. Don't let you get this down. But again, like anything else, I think it's okay to look back at your past so you can learn from it and make better decisions in the future.
Well, once again, Andy and I would like to thank ESPN writer, ESPN, the magazine writer, Seth Wickersham, for coming on and breaking down some of this story that he wrote today that is blown up with Browns fans across the country and around the world, frankly, and giving us this insight into everything that we already knew was going on, but giving a lot more detail into just how wild it gets. And really, it all comes down to Jimmy Haslem at the end of the day with all of this, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I think the bigger things here to learn outside, if you don't play porn on your computer and go throughout the office, that's a big 101 no. You should not do that. But I think the bigger thing here is we all assumed that there was craziness and dysfunction. And sometimes you wonder if that was just not being, is that being too overdramatic? Well, what was being reported was already reported here. That's not the new information. But when you get a national writer kind of confirming what we already knew, Jared, it was dysfunctional. It was every bit dysfunctional.
Andy and I are going to continue with part 2 of our Cleveland Browns 2018 season review for the next episode of the podcast. This one obviously has been inserted in between the first and that next one for obvious reasons. It was a breaking story, and we felt we had to come on and do a show for it. In that second episode, we're going to talk about everything from games 2 all the way to the firing of Hugh Jackson and break that first half of the season down. And, we'll do a third one to cover the rest of the 28 season and go on from there. But Andy, any final thoughts before I wrap this up?
Not on this stuff. I think it's time. Here's the thing why it's good to have things like this today. Jared, you can kind of finally move forward.
Yeah.
Like today, you don't need
and I think that was the goal of why we were even doing the season review stuff too, for our own.
Yeah, correct.
Going forward.
Correct. Like you don't need to, if anybody brings us up a month from now, it's like, no. That we stamped that out.
Yeah.
We're good. Like I don't need to hear any more about Banner, Lombardi, Ray Farmer, Jackson, all those guys. We don't need to hear from anymore. But that story's been stamped. It's already been stamped enough, but my gosh, it has been lit a few. And sometimes you need that happen to go forward and really make the next steps. The one other thing I just want to bring up in talking about how, things are looking for the future, that article did not have one negative touch to me at all about John Dorsey or about the current regime or Freddie Kitchens. That is great news, Browns fans, and that's why the positive is, the future is so positive. Because, Jared, you can tell that it's already looking that bright. And, it's something, I'm just so excited about next year this article to me did not dampen it didn't dampen my spirits. I hope it didn't dampen other Brown spirits either. It shouldn't.
No,
it doesn't take anything away.
It was entertaining, and that's what I wanted out of it today. Don't forget, folks, check us out on social media at facebook.com/Cleveland and Beyond. You can follow us on Twitter at CLE and Beyond. Shoot us an email, andyandjarid@gmail.com. Also, the website where you can find all of our podcasts and follow our blog is andyandjarid.com or clevelandandbeyond.net. Also, don't forget, we're a part of the Pulse Podcast Network. You can check that out at pulsepodcastnetwork.com. You definitely want to check that out, especially if you're a fan of just sports in general. They've got an array of sports podcasts, NFL teams covered. If the Browns aren't your team, but you're just listening to this because of what we talked about today, great. Check out pulsepodcastnetwork.com. Find your team's podcast listed on that page. Andy, this was fun. I'm glad we got a chance to do this one today, even though it was unplanned. He's Andy Billman. I'm Jared Watson. Andy and Jarid, Cleveland and Beyond. I was unplanned as well. So that... I don't know why that came up.
No. That's
what my mom told me.
Well, exactly.
Andy and Jarid.
Well, there you go.
Cleveland and Beyond. Take care, folks. Have a good one.